Hello, my name is John Bannon. I'm an attorney and philosopher. In today's video, I'm going to explain how superdeterminism destroys anti-foundationalism. Anti-foundationalism is the belief that reality lacks a foundation. So you may hear some people claim that reality itself isn't real and we should get rid of it. However, superdeterminism proves that that is completely untrue, and there is a foundation to reality. When I talk about superdeterminism, I'm referring to a very specific, unique version of superdeterminism called Hansonian superdeterminism. And you can find the proof of Hansonian superdeterminism in the peer-reviewed physics journal Physics Essays, Volume 33, Number 2, June of 2020. It starts on page 216 and ends on page 218. It was written by Dr. Johan Hansen, who is a Swedish theoretical physicist. The article is entitled Bell's Theorem and Its Tests Proof That Nature is Superdeterministic, Not Random. So Hansonian superdeterminism says that we live in a static block universe without cause and effect in physics, or without physical causation, or without probabilistic causation. That's a different type of superdeterminism than classic superdeterminism, first posited by Dr. John Bell in 1985. Classic superdeterminism uses hidden causal variables, whereas Hansonian superdeterminism disproves causation, so it can't possibly rely on hidden causal variables. Instead, Hansonian superdeterminism says we live in three dimensions of space and one hidden dimension of time in a fourth dimensional block universe. And that the only thing in this universe is particles. And those particles are set in concrete like pebbles. And you can't change them and you can't move them and they're permanent. However, over the static dimension of time, these static particles create patterns, and these patterns can be described by our laws of physics, and they are what give rise to our experience of our universe. So in Hansonian superdeterminism, you have a static block universe where the past, present, and future are all equally real, and they all presently exist. So everything that happens in the universe throughout time, every event, is fixed, unchangeable, permanent, and it always exists. So even your life is permanent. All the events of your life from your birth to your death continue to exist in the static block universe. You continue to experience all the moments of your life statically, simultaneously in the block universe. You have what I call a permanent block life. You're an immortal. Now, superdeterminism destroys anti-foundationalism. So the logic is very simple. If the block universe is eternal, then the existence of the block universe must be necessary, and therefore it must always exist. So if the block universe has always existed, then the reason it always existed must be necessary, otherwise it wouldn't always exist. So because the reason for its existence must therefore be necessary, then there's no way it could not exist because its existence is necessary. However, if the block universe is not eternal, then it still must always exist. A created or atemporally created static block universe cannot logically be annihilated once it's created, which means it has to always exist. And the reason for that is because there's no cause and effect in physics under superdeterminism, then there is no moving dynamic time because nothing can cause anything to move in time. So, because moving time is not real in the block universe, it's actually an illusion caused by our consciousness, um, then that means the physical universe must be timeless. It has to consist of timeless physical realities. But because it's timeless, it can't be subject to moving time, logically speaking. So if you had the atemporal creation of the whole static block universe simultaneously coming into existence, and then you annihilated the block universe, made it not exist, then there would be two reference frames in which you could measure a duration of moving time. That is, from the moment of creation to the moment of annihilation. That would subject the static block universe to moving time. But because the static block universe is timeless, it cannot be subject to moving time. Therefore, once it's created, it cannot be annihilated, logically speaking, because that would be a contradiction. It would be a timeless physical reality subject to time because it was annihilated. Therefore, uh, the block universe atemporally created outside of space time results in the logical impossibility of it being annihilated, which means it has to be permanent. So, however you look at it, whether the universe is eternal or whether it was atemporally created, it is still permanent and it must always exist. Because the block universe is permanent and must always exist, uh, then it is a permanent foundation for reality. Not only that, because the universe is predetermined, then consciousness itself has to be a predetermined aspect of the physical block universe. And I'll explain to you why. So, if you take, for example, a conscious decision you might make to move your arm, you decide to move your arm, and then sometime in the future, your arm moves. Well, because your arm is undeniably a physical reality, then that future arm movement must be predetermined and already existing in the future dimensions of time in the static block universe. It has to be there. Well, if the future movement of your arm is in the block universe already, then your conscious decision to move your arm must be predetermined in order for the arm movement to be predetermined. So your consciousness has to be predetermined. And when you think about your consciousness and where it's located right where your brain is. And your brain is full of brain particles. And brain particles are undeniably physical realities that are subject to the predetermined static block universe. So it must be the predetermined arrangement of brain particles that predetermines your conscious thought to move the predetermined arm or any body part, for instance. So thoughts themselves, consciousness and thoughts, are physical realities and aspects of the static block universe itself. Now, you may wonder how it is that an immaterial consciousness could be a physical, predetermined thing. Well, that's a mystery. But if I were to guess, I would say it's because of this. The universe itself appears to be a form of logic. And the reason for that is we can describe the behavior of the universe using logical mathematical laws of physics. So if you understand that physical reality is really a form of logic, then you can imagine that brain particles are creating a different form of logic, what I call logic of the possible, through um, their complicated organization. And because of this form of logic called the logic of the possible, because it's real, it must exist. And that means it has its own reality. And that reality is what you describe as your immaterial conscious experience. Um, so that'll give you some idea of how an immaterial reality could possibly be a physical reality. And that's because it's a different form of logic, but it's a logic that is created by the brain particles, which are a physical reality. So the logic is a physical reality. The experience of consciousness, therefore, is also a form of physical reality. Um, so, because our conscious thoughts and our thoughts about knowledge are a physical reality and predetermined aspect of our static block universe, then that knowledge is founded on the existence of the static block universe itself. So knowledge is also founded on a permanent static block universe. And in addition, some people claim that reality is really consciousness. However, under superdeterminism, consciousness is derived from the block universe. It is an aspect of the block universe itself. It has to be because it's predetermined. And therefore, consciousness is a derivative reality based on the foundational reality of physical reality of the block universe. So reality is not consciousness. Consciousness is based on the foundational reality of the predetermined static block universe. So, in addition, the idea that everything lacks a foundation because it is contingent and could have been otherwise is untrue under Hansonian superdeterminism. Under Hansonian superdeterminism, because there's no cause and effect in physics, and every event in the past, present, and future is predetermined, and you can't change it, and it's permanent, then there's no such thing as real possibility in the universe. Things could not have been otherwise than what they are, because there's no cause and effect in physics that could account for them being otherwise than what they are. There's no mechanism for something besides what they are to exist. So there is no such thing as real possibility under Hansonian superdeterminism. For instance, you have no free will on Earth under Hansonian superdeterminism. The idea that you have free will and your decisions could change the outcomes of the future in an open future is false under Hansonian superdeterminism because the future already exists in the block. You can't change it without cause and effect in physics. Therefore, you can't possibly have free will to change the direction of what the future already exists as. So there's no such thing as real possibility under Hansonian superdeterminism. Everything is fixed, permanent, static. It doesn't move, and it's not going anywhere. So there's no such thing as real possibility. So there's no such thing as, well, everything is contingent because it could have been otherwise. That's not true in our universe. So superdeterminism thoroughly destroys anti-foundationalism. Uh, Now, I hope you'll learn something, and I'll give you a second to read the board. Now, I do want to make one point, and that is superdeterminism tells us about the static block universe. It doesn't tell us about what is metaphysically possible beyond the static block universe, such as the existence of God. So you can still have a God under Hansonian superdeterminism. You can still have the atemporal creation of the block universe under Hansonian superdeterminism. But what you can have is a block universe that can disappear, or that is a an ever churning becoming of every moment. That is impossible without cause and effect in physics, because the present can't cause the next moment in time. The next moment in time must therefore already exist, and it exists in the static hidden dimension of time. All right, until next time, take care.